a Black entrepreneur. Oh, fantastic. It's being recorded. Amazing. It doesn't matter where you are in the country, you are able to access some level of support. Regardless of whether it is what industry you're in, what size of business you are, what stage you're at, or what it is that you're looking for. And we also, in 2024, we are really, really keen to start supporting business owners to get access to the right type of finance at the right time. So if you are interested in finding out more about the Black Entrepreneurs Programme, then what you need to do is head to lloydsbank.com/Black businesses. I will say that one more time and then I will put it in the chat just to make sure everyone knows what the URL is. That's lloydsbank.com/Black businesses. I hope you guys have a fantastic session today, and hopefully I will be able to meet you all in person very soon.
Thank you very much, Kalia, for such a lovely introduction to the workshop. We deeply appreciate you and also all the support that comes from Lloyds Bank in supporting the startup community and ecosystem. Great. And so moving on to the next section of this AI workshop, this is where we try to break the ice. And so we are going to do a couple of icebreakers. Matilda will post in the chat the icebreaker link and also the code. Please let us know if you are able to access it. And we'll begin. Can we get like a thumbs up in the chat if you're able to access the... Great. Fantastic. Great. And so the first question, as we have a lot of founders on the call, if you had two choices, right? A one-to-one meeting with Warren Buffett or £1 million for a startup, what would it be? Wow. Great. We have two responses, three coming in. Are we able to post in the chat the reason behind our choices? Why would you go for a meeting with Warren Buffett and £1 million or vice versa? Wow, Winnie, that's an interesting perspective, you know. So Winnie is telling us that, I mean, she would go in for a meeting with Warren Buffett so I can learn how to make 10 million, which is quite a smart move. says says he's going to buy Warren a 500K mil and he will turn up. I agree with you, Tommy. Tommy, would you want to unmute and share your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think for me, if you're dedicated to what you're doing, making £1 million is a given. It's just about when. However, meeting Warren Buffett, it's very rare, and it's pretty much going to show you insights into, how to be a money multiplier, and that is very, very rare.
Fantastic, Tommy. Just to say, I do agree with you 110% on that. All right. I mean, an interesting perspective coming from Kemi. Kemi is saying £1 million is guaranteed. I may not learn from Warren. Well, who knows? Okay, for the interest of time, we would want to move on to the next question. And so if AI could accurately predict an aspect of your future, what would you want it to predict? I mean, imagine having the superpower of being able to predict your future, and AI could do that. What one aspect would you want AI to predict? Wow. Well, I think I do agree. No one knows the time of death. And if you do know, probably you can prevent it. So I do agree with that. Interesting. My most profitable business. So you have two responses coming in. Yeah, growing investments. I think that's quite interesting, you know. The next pandemic. Yeah, the next pandemic. I mean, whoever knew, I mean, COVID was coming in 2020. I mean, that would be great. My impact on the world, nice. Workforce in 30. Interesting responses coming in. So I'll throw this to you, Shadi. Shadi, what would be your response to this question?
Oh, if I had to predict something, I would definitely say, yeah, it's something around lifespan, just so that I could live every day knowing that, yeah, I'm when things might end, sort of thing. So yeah, I'd say that one.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think I'll also go in for that, you know. Who doesn't want to live long?
Yeah, it's the not knowing, right? It's having that control at least.
Exactly. Great. In the interest of time for the next question, if you could switch places with one serial founder, oh wow, Jeff Bezos, in the world for an hour, who would it be and why? I think it would be great to get like some perspectives in the chat, the names coming in. Elon, interesting. Mustafa Suleiman. I actually don't know who that is, though. Jay-Z. Pinky Cole. Interesting names coming in. Strive Masiwa. I do know Strive Masiwa. I mean he's a great guy doing great stuff on the African continent. Well, in the chat from Winnie Tristan Walker, that would be great. Kim Kardashian, nice. Great. So throwing this to one of the panelists, Dan, you're not, I don't know if you're founder, but from your profile, you are based in Microsoft, but let's say if you had the opportunity to trade places with one serial founder, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so the guy I put forward was Mustafa Suleiman. So he's the one who kind of co-created DeepMind, that's now part of Google. And then he left and created another AI business, and then that's been bought out by Microsoft, and he's now like a senior VP at Microsoft heading up a new AI business. So he's a very interesting character.
Great. Thank you very much for the response. Last but not least, would you prefer 30 minutes chat with a historical figure in the 16th century, or let's say wonder about in the 30th century? What would your choice be? 30th century, seems we have a couple of futuristic people here, yeah? Wow. It seems that everyone wants to know more about the future. I think, Kalia, I would want to throw that question to you and Gan. What would your choice be?
I can go ahead. My choice would be 30s, then someone from the future.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with Cecil. There's no Wi-Fi in the 16th century, so I don't know how this historical figure, how well is he or she informed versus 30th century. Yeah, I'm just more forward-looking.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too as well, Gan. Is Kali around?
Yeah, I'm here. I would prefer to go back into the past, but not the 16th century, because that's like the 1500s. So I'm thinking there's no sewage, So I think people is going to be smelling there's no real infrastructure. I'd probably go into the 20th century during something like World War II or something like that, just to see what life was actually like in the UK when all of that was happening, and see if there's any difference in attitudes towards such a world event. Like, for instance, and compare it to how we responded to like the pandemic and stuff like that.
That's nice. That's nice. Thank you very much for that, Kalia. Dan says, if you don't learn from the past, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes. Some wise words over there. Great. And from Zara, one of the participants, I'll be dead, and I think I can guess how the future is going based on what we are doing now. Interesting perspective. Great. And so all too soon that brings us to the end of our icebreaker. But one word to describe your expectations for this workshop, we want to gauge the enthusiasm in the room. And so we just want some responses from you. How expectant are you? And one word to describe this: thrilling, innovative, insightful, inspirational. Wow, strong words. Knowledgeable. Knowledge, great. Great. I do agree with insightful because we have a lineup of esteemed speakers. And so we'll delve right into the workshop now. This brings us to the end of the icebreaker. Hope we got interactive with that. We'll move on to the next session on the workshop, where we would have our speakers introduce themselves. I'll leave this over to Sade, who is going to be moderating the panel and asking key questions that will benefit our panelists when it comes to the area of artificial intelligence and how we can harness this for business success. And so over to you, Sade.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet everyone, and I'm sure this will be a really interesting chat between us all. So as we've come to know, that AI is the fourth revolution, apparently. So just to delve in, I'll introduce myself and then I'll hand it over to everyone else on the panel. So I'm Sade. I have around 12 years experience in innovation and technology, mainly for large organizations. And then 2 years ago, I embarked on starting my own startup, which is in machine learning and AI. So we essentially interpret human behavior, and we do this to help brands create empathy with their customers. So by interpreting feedback, so whether that's video feedback, whether that is text feedback or tone of voice, we help brands to understand what people are thinking, essentially. And without further ado, I am joined with 3 other people. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Dan. Well, he'll introduce himself, actually. Dan, you're up.
Yep, so I studied cognitive science at university, so I've been looking at the field of AI and things that are relevant to AI, like psychology and anthropology, linguistics, etc., ever since. And in my career, I've worked in both startups, medium-sized businesses, and kind of created my own organizations that got kind of acquired. But I am now 7 years at Microsoft. My role is one focused on building data and AI solutions with partners and helping them take that to market, building up their skill set. So thankfully, I'm back in the space where I'm just living and breathing kind of data and AI as a topic.
Sounds amazing. I didn't know that about the cognitive psychology. My degree was in psychology, so I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about after this. So the next person is Tommy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tommy Edwards. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tech1M. And basically what we do is we simplify talent acquisition by leveraging data and artificial intelligence to organize, to pretty much understand, the anatomy of a candidate. So this is trying to use multiple data points and data sources to understand what an ideal candidate will be for any given customer per time. So I'm kind of excited about the panel. I think it's an opportunity to share and also to learn quite a lot. And we'll see how it goes from there. Thank you.
you. Thanks, Tommy. So the next person we have is Gan. We haven't doubled up on Tommy, so please ignore
Oh,
me.
like my name is double. But Gan, my name kind of suits you.
I know, right?
I'm also Tommy. I'm just kidding. My name is Gan Zhang, and I have a background in product management. Through my whole career, I have mainly worked in Fortune 500 companies, specifically developing products powered by data and AI. And on the side, I have also started getting involved with a couple of VC accelerators. So I've been advising the product development process for a few startups on fractional basis. Very looking forward to sharing and learning today.
Thank you, Gan. So without further ado, I will get into the first topic. So this is broken into 5 sections. So the first topic is Introduction to AI in Business, understanding the fundamentals of artificial intelligence, exploring real-world applications of AI in various industries. So that's followed by a question. And the question for this section is, how can artificial intelligence technologies enhance productivity for founders across different sectors and business stages? So I will hand that over to Tommy. Oh, you're on mute.
Apologies. Yeah, thank you very much, Shade. I feel like right now, everyone on this call tells you everything you need to know. So it's about, we are like 47 people on this call. We're all intrigued about what is happening with artificial intelligence. And it's now about how exactly can we harness that. Last night, an announcement was made about GPT 4.0, which I saw what that could do. And I'm like, oh my God, the world is over. And it just tells you what is to come. And I think for us as founders and businesses, is for us to start to look at the opportunities that are out there, but also not looking at it as, okay, how can I just bring in AI into my company? Because it could do very good, but it could also be something that it's, you know, that could also impact the future negatively. So this is where my stance right now is looking more about ethical AI. So it's about, we are building things into our own organization. And so many founders right now, it's just like the revolution of the internet. It was, you know, you have to bring your whatever you have offline onto an online presence, and everyone had to have a www dot. Very soon, every single person has to possibly harness AI, but it's about how do we do it in a very safe manner. And I think that's going to be an interesting area for me to see within the next 5 years. And actually, it might even be sooner than that, because I know that for every startup you see right now, everyone is talking about AI driven here, AI powered here, but it's all about, do we really understand what sits behind this? How are we actually getting this data point? How are we using this data? How are we learning and actually training this AI in itself for it to actually then learn from itself? How does this machine work? So this is time for us to start pretty much harnessing or growing the word that we have in here, and just trying to pretty much understand this for itself from the basis of it. What exactly is this? How is this going to help me? What am I doing right now? What is AI? How can I leverage it to better lead us in better productivity? But also, while I'm trying to do that, how can this give us, you know, something better for our customers? Does it help our own internal business, but does it also help our customers in the process? So those are kind of the things that I'm curious about. We use AI in a very interesting way, and I could see us doubling down on that a whole lot more, because it actually helps our system become very smart. But at the same time, it's all about the treading the line of the ethical line, and I'm very curious about that. So I hope I answered your question, Shadi.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. I'll also chime in here. So this is how, sorry, excuse me, everyone. AI technologies can enhance productivity for founders across different sectors. I can maybe just speak a bit generically around AI because obviously it falls into different groups. So I think, you know, with machine learning, that's my expertise and been in that field for a while now. But with the next, I guess now what everyone calls AI is generative AI. So for me, really, I've only started using generative AI, I would say, in the last year or so since ChatGPT. So the classic. I'm not really sure about the penetration with ChatGPT, but I would say anyone basically using it now, or at least at the start, is somewhat of an early adopter. So I use it a lot to enhance my productivity when it comes to writing emails. That for me is one of the worst parts of my job. I'm neurodiverse, so I literally hate having to like write emails, but I'm a founder, I'm a CEO, so I can't get away with not writing emails. So I found that has basically reduced my time in terms of writing emails by about 50 to 60% actually. So that's one way I use generative AI. In terms of AI, in terms of automation, that's something that I'm working through at the moment, is automate my sales process. Not there yet. However, by using, well, actually, I thought with the GPT store, which I think they've sort of postponed, I'm not too sure, but I was trying to write a GPT that could automate sales. So yeah, I would say for me, I've used it to kind of do the dull work that I'm not really particularly that excited by, and then that frees me up to do more of the strategic work. So yeah, that's how I have essentially used AI to enhance my productivity personally as a founder. So just checking time. Does anyone else want to answer that from the panel, or we could move on to the next section?
I was gonna say, I guess I could add, like, I loved all of the points that Tommy made, because it really resonates with me. But ultimately, when you're talking about something like a GPT, right, it's like having this kind of more advanced level search capability. I think you always have to make sure you kind of know how to use it, because it's still a tool, and you have to kind of verify the responses, in particular with Gen AI, what comes back. But in terms of productivity, it's about that ability to have a tool that can really shortcut timeframes, like help you create new content, help you, devise like that email, help you. And even if, so for me, the kind of conversations I typically have saying, even if it just shaves off 10 minutes a day, well, 10 minutes a day over the course of a week, over the course of a month is a massive kind of time given back to me, and time's probably our most valuable resource. So therefore, if you're able to kind of really leverage these AI tools to the max to do automations and intelligent summarization, etc., it gives you back your time and kind of relieves you, hopefully, of those kind of mundane tasks.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's kind of how I'm using it at the moment. And yeah, let's see in the future. I'm sure the next couple of years we'll be using it in a different way. Once we've wrapped our heads around how we should be using it, and once we've got the checks and balances built in, and we can actually trust it a bit more as well. That's how I sort of wrap that section up. So we're going on to section number 2. So this is around productivity boosters with AI. So implementing AI-driven tools for workflow automation, which we kind of touched upon, and then also leveraging AI for data analysis and decision-making processes. You might have heard excitement in my voice there. So the question we have for that is, what specific AI tools or applications do you recommend for founders to streamline their operations and scale their ventures effectively? And we'll start here with Dan.
So with a Microsoft hat on, I'd obviously say go get like Office or Microsoft 365 and have a Copilot kind of license. So Copilot is an incredible tool. But if you step back away from that, it's more that idea of like the LLM, the GPT style capabilities. I think that's an incredible tool that you can start to access freely now. But if you're using the free version, just be aware of what you're giving it. It's not a protected private resource. So you can consider whether like a paid for variant of those things are going to really be of benefit to your business. So I'd always say trial it out with different people within your business, really figure out how you're going to leverage the tools to drive those benefits. And then I guess what you're starting to see a lot of businesses do as well is try to, well, what Microsoft calls it is democratization. They're trying to lower the barrier to entry for people to actually bring their ideas and create like AI solutions. So you'll have like low code, no code ability. So somebody who's like basically a power business user, somebody who really understands the problems they're trying to solve. You can look at how do I automate things within my business. So you don't need to have a massive IT department, right? If you're a startup, you have limited funds. And actually, if you get somebody who's kind of capable of starting to automate some back-end processes for your business, you can really kind of accelerate things, because it's easy when you're a startup to be, you know, this kind of 4 or 5 people that you trust and you know, and you can collaborate. The hardest thing typically for a startup is as you start to scale and grow, you always hit a bottleneck stage where getting to the next leap of revenue or people is a problem. And so therefore identifying the right kinds of tools can really help to kind of, I guess, drive those efficiencies in the back end. So if you're technically minded, so maybe Sade, this will be something you'd be looking at, like something like TensorFlow, right? It's look at open source tools, right? Go leverage the open source tools, take them on, and then adapt them for your own business. Because it's open source, you're not having to pay a license for it, but then you're having to make sure you're getting yourself skilled up to really take advantage of them. So what I can do is I can list out in the chat afterwards, like a list of valuable kind of free resources or tools or things that can really act as accelerators for those kind of streamlining operations, and you know, it depends on how you're looking at it, but there'll be things that are back end and front end that can all come together to kind of drive a business forward.
Sounds great, Dan. And I'm just thinking, if I was in the panel, not to put you on the spot, but kind of, sorry, if I was in the audience, I'd be asking, do you have any use cases where a specific tool was used and what that looked like from beginning to end, and what was the outcome or impact?
Yeah, so I've been working with a few startups where, for example, they'll have bought that GPT style capability for GitHub. So they've got their GitHub Copilot, and they're talking about how it just massively helps them move the needle in terms of getting outcomes and experimenting. So when you're like a tech startup and you're looking to develop applications, that's something where they kind of took a punt to buy a few licenses, get a couple of their developers on, and they're only like an 8-man or an 8-person business. But yeah, they were able to then innovate faster and also then get in people who are less experienced coders to kind of turn like their notes and ideas into code, and therefore it's just a far more collaborative experience. So therefore the kinds of outcomes they're getting is they're doing those POCs faster, and if they were having conversations with investors, they were able to turn something that somebody might have said in the meeting into something they could actually demonstrate in a shorter time frame. So they're able to kind of innovate faster. So that was one of the examples that I saw just a couple of months ago that I was impressed with.
That's really cool. It's almost taking POCs to somewhat real time, essentially. That's super cool. So thank you for that. I'm going to throw the question to Tommy. Do you need me to read it again, or you got it?
So the same question. So yeah. I was always going to recommend my tool.
Go ahead. That's what it does.
But I'm conscious to actually hear Gan's answer as well. So in terms of course, we all use multiple things. The easiest one is GPT-4, and it's just like an assistant that I only pay £20 a month. So I'm excited to have that. But then we use so many things. So in terms of you're going for a meeting, when you're a super, super busy person, you want to have like pretty much a co-pilot that's just going to summarize the entire meeting for you. So I use there are quite a number of them. I think I use read.me. That's kind of like the one I use, if that's what it's called. I know it's read. I can't remember the dot something. But then there is Tech1M. And so this is a plug. I might as well plug myself. So basically what we do and how recruiters find our platform helpful. Right now it's still in a closed beta, which is going to be opening quite soon. But what it does is it's just transformative. So just something as basic as writing a job description. So what we've done is that we've just plugged in OpenAI into our platform to be able to do that basic level of writing the job description. But then we then took it further, which is after the job description has been written, you can then send that out. That goes off to all the different candidates that would then probably be applying. Once they're applying, they're sending videos, they're putting in their resume, then we've written an algorithm that automatically then grades that for you. But this is where the power of AI then comes in. So in terms of all the data points that we're getting from the candidates, we've built an LLM on our platform that allows recruiters to just basically say, is Shade a great facilitator? And it just basically tells you that 3 years ago, Shade did this, did that. And this is just coming based on the data we already have from Shade. So what does this do? It allows them to be able to understand candidates better, and which ends up making them make better results. Then we take that onto assessment. And then in terms of automating every aspect of it. So this is where we are combining AI alongside automation, alongside data analytics, putting all of that together and creating a superpower. So I think for founders that are listening, this is like I think it's a smart way of using it. There's the easy level, which is something like job description, that's easy. But then you could then do the one where you're then basically building an LLM on top of it, feeding it your own data, allowing it to learn, and you'll just be shocked by what could come out. So I'm pretty excited by all the different, apart from ChatGPT, there's also the Google Gemini, there's also Microsoft. They're just kind of a few ones that you could start to experiment on and see what happens. But I think this is an exciting era to be living in. You could get things done a whole lot faster, and you could basically turn yourself into an octopus and have like 8 times to do multiple things.
Love the excitement there, Tommy. Can I ask you, if it's not confidential, what LLM did you build on top of and fine tune, and why?
So we started with TensorFlow. So I was nodding when Dan was saying that. So this was kind of like how we learned how to do everything that we did. But in terms of the LLM in itself, that is, I'll leave that to my team to be able to tell you that.
All right, so you're like me, you try not to get too much involved in the tech side of things. Okay, thank you. Gan, do you want to chime in here?
There's not so much to add. I think Tommy and Dan answered perfectly. My experience is that many of the B2B SaaS products nowadays do have an AI copilot feature. So I would still suggest everyone to take advantage of that. And also before you procure any B2B SaaS product to enhance your workflow and efficiency, definitely take everything into consideration, not just the AI copilot, but as well as the overall architecture. So I think, yeah, just be cautious. Don't lose sight over things that are outside of AI.
Yeah, I really like that, actually, the integration part, and also just making sure that like the spend sort of makes sense as well. The only thing I've got to contribute here, as I mentioned before, I am trying to automate my sales process. For some reason, I'm still not using a AI co-pilot that basically joins all your sales calls. So I'm yet to choose one, but I can put a list. I'm doing an audit of some at the moment, so I can send a list out after. But I do know of founders who are using an AI co-pilot on their calls, and then it links to HubSpot, and essentially it takes out all the sort of keywords. So the next time the person basically said that they're free to have a call, also intent to buy information. So I'm super excited to get to the point where, yeah, I can automate my outbound sales, because again, it's one of those things that just takes too much time and it's not fun. So yeah, that's my 2 pence there. So the next topic we have, which is topic number 3 out of 5, and then we go to Q&A. So AI-driven business insights, extracting meaningful insights from big data using AI algorithms, and then enhancing strategic decision-making with predictive analytics. So the question we have here is, could you provide examples of successful integration of AI, I'm also going to say AI and ML, solutions in improving decision-making processes for business? And I'll hand it to Gan for this one.
Sure. I would provide you examples, not just one example. So one example would be the use case of Gen AI, and the other one is the traditional non-Gen AI use case. Let's start from the Gen AI use case. While I was working global shipping, I was a product manager at Maersk Logistics, the biggest shipping company in the world. And typically, when they try to get contract from big manufacturers such as Nike or IKEA, the previous process was they gather what IKEA or Nike want in terms of shipping services, and then they gather those information, put them into a template that Maersk internally uses, and then they could pull pricing data as well as cost data together so that they can respond to this RFP. And it generally takes 3 months to sign a big contract like this. And the consequence is that they only have the resource to do so for bigger companies like Nike and IKEA. For medium-sized companies, it's very hard to get a long-term contract with global shippers like Maersk. So the level of service is just not great. However, with ChatGPT, or the GPT model, it is a lot easier to gather the requirements from multiple potential customers and translate them into our RFP template so that Maersk's salespeople, sales agents can create deals as well as pricing, quotation, at a much faster pace, and that was a booster in terms of the long-term contract negotiation. So that's a use case of Gen AI in the last 12 months. And in terms of non-Gen AI application, I will say in terms of using data, machine learning, pricing is still a top area to leverage machine learning. While I was working at Trip.com, which is the parent company of Skyscanner, the company was able to use historical competitor data as well as real-time data to predict for a particular itinerary what would be a competitor's price would be. For example, tomorrow you have a flight from London to New York, JFK, and currently you, as Skyscanner, you're charging £200, but Expedia is charging $195. And then this model could potentially tell you at a pretty accurate level that what's Expedia or the cheapest competitor is charging, and then your AI model could decide if you want to bid against your competitor, in this case Expedia, and that's the dynamic pricing algorithm is a pretty successful use case of AI in the industry. That's what I have to share.
Thanks, Dan. That's really real life, sort of how the big organizations tend to work, especially predictive modeling, but also the evolution moving from predictive modeling to now more Gen AI. I don't think I sort of left big corporate before, so yeah, I actually don't know how they're using Gen AI, but perhaps Dan could tell us that.
Yeah, I mean, so prior to my switch to the global team that I'm on now, I used to do a lot of work with the advisory firms. And so something that EY have done, for example, for years they tried to convince me that tax was sexy. Those are words they used. I wasn't convinced, but tax is complicated, regulated, different in every part of the world. But what they did is really try to use that data and infuse it with AI. And then when Gen AI became a thing, also then infuse this kind of Gen AI capability into it to really transform the way that people can have conversations around tax implications, either at a really small scale, so when advising smaller businesses, through to like large scale multinational corporate entities. And they're saving like hundreds of thousands of hours because they're able to leverage that content and ask nuanced questions and get like trusted answers, because what they've done is obviously bound the LLM to the data really tightly and make sure to I guess reduce that possibility of any hallucinations. But I thought that was a really interesting early use case, because it was something they'd been looking at, and therefore the introduction of Gen AI kind of really helped transform the way that they could interact with the data. So whilst they'd already done loads of work from a machine learning perspective, and they could surface it through some sort of application, that ability to kind of have that chat GPT style experience has been quite transformative. Also that ability, I guess, once you've got like a massive corpus of data, to kind of have more of that, like that networked knowledge kind of capability, really helps to expose some of the bizarre nuances that you get with tax.
Sounds great. So I think we're saying Gen AI is essentially ML on steroids or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so my controversial view is that, so when I studied AI, we were studying stuff that people had kind of come up with in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, the math.
And really, the stuff that I used to have to draw on a whiteboard, like my neural networks, draw out the weightings, etc. The biggest change from that perspective in terms of what we understood to now is access to data and compute power. So it's kind of like brute force. So most AI, as we know it, is really just advanced mathematical statistics.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything particularly magical. It doesn't genuinely understand language. But like an LLM, it is doing interesting things that people are still trying to understand. But yeah, without data, without people treating data with the kind of respect that it deserves, and knowing how to engineer it properly to remove biases and then do the machine learning on the top of it, it's you know, that's where the magic lies.
Yeah.
But yeah, things I think whatever we're seeing in the market right now in terms of AI literally is the tip of the iceberg. Things are going to develop quickly over the next 10 years.
I absolutely agree. And I think weirdly one of the questions I have is any of like mathematics going to change? Are we going to come up with new sort of algorithms essentially? I guess, yeah, to an extent LLMs was, but yeah, I totally agree. It's like we had everything sort of sat there for however many years, and just now with the compute power and moving from data warehousing to cloud computing has essentially given us all these opportunities. But yeah, whether we're using it for the right things, I don't know yet, but let's see. So Tommy, do you want to contribute as well to this question? Can I actually remember what the question was? Could you provide examples of successful integrations of AI-driven solutions in improving decision-making processes for businesses?
Yeah, so I think Dan's perspective from an enterprise company obviously makes a lot of sense, and I could see how they're saving tons and tons of hours. But regardless of what size of business you are, I feel like, you know, there's so much you could save if you're using the right tool. And in terms of how this helps in terms of decision making, I feel like, so you can imagine when you're doing, and sometimes I spook myself with this. So, you know, when you're doing all the grant writing and you have all the, you know, the Innovate UK things that you have to do, and you have all the multiple things that you need to write. And I'm like, do you know every single one of us is doing this? Like, how is our answers going to be different from each other and stuff like that? So even though it helps you like cut down the time, you also have to, you know, understand that the accuracy of that data is something, and then bringing your own context. And this is why I like what Dan said, that bringing your own data, building, you know, the whole LLM, making sure that you're training it on the right data, And now using analytics to then be able to just interpret whatever this is saying is where the golden goose is. This is where you could really find joy. So for us, other than using multiple tools to ensure that, we're more productive, I also haven't really tried, because I think there's another problem I'm seeing with a lot of B2B SaaS companies. It's like, we're not sure how to price it. We're not sure how to actually give this out. Everyone's trying credit, and then you have this number of credit, and when the credit runs out, but then what happens with the tokens? Is it once I ask a question, how many tokens so all of it is still early days. I tried to use Notion's AI. I'm like, okay, I still went back to ChatGPT. I'm like, I'm not paying for that. It's the same thing that it's taking. I tried to use Intercom. Intercom has this very interesting one, which early days, I feel like it could actually be like a super genius, because this is where it's taking all the questions that customers are asking, understanding how Tequantum already works, plugging that into it and acting as a more than a co-pilot, you know what I mean? So it's like, typically you have an AI chatbot that just basically responds based on the things that you've given it, but now it's basically learning on itself. And that is an area that we're just starting to use, and I'm finding quite interesting. And like Dan said, it's the tip of the iceberg. If what I saw yesterday, that really spooked me out, because you need to watch the demo. And I'm like, is this where the world is going? What can we do with that? Yeah, so that's where we are. Another one I used a lot before the whole ChatGPT thing came out is Synthesia. I don't know if you guys have heard that. So Synthesia was like my genius baby for like 2 years now, or 3 years. And this is where I could transform myself into an AI, and I just start to speak, so I could multiply myself into multiple places. And so now, where does Synthesia sit with 4.0? I don't know. So it's just so many things going through my head with that, but there's just tons of ways you could stay productive, but you just have to be curious.
Thank you, Tommy. I really like that. Seems like you've used quite a lot of these tools, and yeah, I just wonder if there is somewhere that we could all sort of access like an audit or people's opinions. I guess I would ask, have you used Synthesia less now than, yeah?
Oh, there's so many Synthesias coming up every day.
And now GPT, right? So fair enough. Cool, thank you. So I'm mindful of time. We have another 20 minutes before Q&A, and we have about 4 questions left. I might try and combine some of them. So the next one is, how can founders leverage AI analytics to gain actionable insights into market trends and consumer behaviors, thereby optimizing their business strategy? So that's one question. I'll figure out how to combine the rest. Who wants to go first? Should I read it again, or should I just go? So the question is, how can founders leverage AI-powered analytics to gain actionable insights into market trends and customer behavior, thereby optimizing their business? So I think we kind of did speak about this.
Yeah, I think so.
Mainly on the business side of things. However,
we could touch on it again. I think that
from a founder,
from a founder's perspective, data, you've heard data is king, or is more king now. It's superpower. And it's not just having data. You have to find ways to capture data that pretty much, I'll give you an example. And I keep coming back to my own example, because that's all I could give, because that's the practical thing I understand. We're trying to capture multiple data points. In order to capture multiple data points, it means that you have to really sit down and say, where do these people go to? What do they give? And how do you tread the legal, because at the end of the day, we're in Europe, we have GDPR. So I can't just get your emails from anywhere. I have to get it in an ethical manner. You have to absolutely give it to me and consent for me to use that. And it's just how to find that. Oh, and also we've never shared more. This is the time where we're sharing everything. We have so much on, there's so much public profiles that you could get out there. We're sharing on marketplaces. We're sharing on communities. We're sharing on social media. We're sharing, things that we don't even need to share. We're just sharing. We're giving away everything so freely. And now people are taking those things and now using it to form an opinion of what they think you are. And this is the power for founders. This is where, how many collaborations can you do to be able to say, if I want to understand the anatomy of a candidate, I need to understand what courses has this candidate taken. So do I need to now integrate with like Coursera to say, we could be a partner, but then I also want the data at the end of it. Did they actually finish that AI course they signed up for? And that changes the game, because then I know a bit more about this person. And, how many workshops have they attended? Did this person finish the Founder Vine workshop at the end of the day, or did they come out at, all of that could mean something. And it's just the different data points that you could take, turn all of that together and be able to make meaningful decisions with that. And making meaningful decisions means that you could then find ways within your own application to interpret this multiple data things that you're collecting, and also find new ways to keep collecting more, but still stay ethical. And that's like the main thing. Because I feel like at some point, the regulation is going to come heavy. We're still trying to understand so many things, and early days, but as a founder, all I just need to do is to keep my ears to the ground, understand what sort of data I need to be collecting, and find more ways to collect more data.
So data mining instead of gold, essentially. Data is the new gold. So I can see Q&A live. Oh, Wafa, is that for me? Oh no, keep going. Yeah, keep going. Okay, cool. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Tommy. Yeah, the only thing, yeah, I'll just chime in with my perspective on that. Agree with everything that you've said. Funny enough, when I started my company, which essentially analyzes videos, text, tone of voice, facial expressions through computer vision, 2 years ago, my concern was, is the UK ready for it? Are people going to be that comfortable giving me feedback on, a product launch or what they think about the pandemic and how it's changed their life? But yeah, we did quite a lot of tests actually before going to market with this product. So we didn't just go to market, hence user and product testing is really important. And yeah, I think about 50 odd people we spoke to in the beginning. And we also have our terms and conditions. Maybe 1% of people actually, they probably all read it, hopefully, but 1% actually follow up and ask what the data's being used for. But yeah, we've had scenarios where people would just film themselves chatting whilst they're in the bath. So that just goes to show how comfortable people are now with giving their sort of data away. However, I still do question how much people know, like the layperson companies are using their data. Pre-GDPR, I guess, was just a whole thing on its own. Hence, we had the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And I mean, even places I worked, we would buy data from wherever, FMCG, club cards, banks. People had people's emails on USB sticks back then. So yeah, I do believe that we're, at least now, as Tommy said, with regulation coming in, there'll be a tier of what you can do with data. So it's kind of predicted, and I think that's coming to the next section, how to stay ahead. There'll be certain companies that have kind of gone beyond what you can use data for, especially when making predictions and not disclosing that. So yeah, a lot of people are going to have to think about their business models in the next, I believe the AI safety regulations coming out in 2025. So definitely stay on top of that, is what I'll say. So we can move on now to the, I believe this is final. Is this the final section? No, final before Q&A. So the future of the future of tech for business owners, exploring emerging technologies and their potential impact on businesses, anticipating future trends and staying ahead of the curve. So, what are some of the potential challenges or barriers that founders might face when implementing AI technologies in their venture, and how can these challenges be overcome? I might just combine the next one if it makes sense. As we embrace AI technologies to drive innovation and efficiencies in business, how can we ensure ethical considerations and responsibilities of AI remain at the forefront of decision-making processes? So essentially, I'm asking about ethics and also barriers within AI. So Gan, over to you for that one.
In terms of barriers, I will say having the data itself to tailor the large language model or whatever model you want to produce is the biggest barrier from a technical standpoint. In terms of people and technology, it becomes less of a concern because the large language model has made implementing or creating software, writing algorithm a lot easier. So that's a good sign for smaller or medium-sized businesses. And going back to the biggest barrier that I have seen is really just stay customer-centric. And it's the same truth for companies of every size, knowing what the problem to solve and what exactly the solution should be. It's not easy. It sounds easy, but it is not. It takes a lot of analysis, user interview, experimentation to validate. So what I would encourage is that before jumping into a solution, always stay ahead on the market trends and your user needs. Because at the end of the day, you're providing a service or product to your customers and users. So stay ahead of their needs will really dictate what the solution should be, and it could be powered by Gen AI or something else. And in terms of the ethics part, I would like to share what I learned from the CDO of the UK government, the Chief Data Officer of the UK government. There is a lot of uncertainties in AI for sure, but we don't want to limit innovation because of the uncertainties. The approach he encourages to take calculated risk and identify industries where consequences of AI malpractice is low, and then that would be an area where you could safely and boldly experiment, and versus in areas or industries that are slightly sensitive, that's where you want to be a bit more cautious, and that include trading, that include recruiting. So it really depends on the industry, your risk profile against AI ethics or AI malpractice would really vary.
Thank you for that, Gan. Very comprehensive. So I would say, Dan, sorry, my throat. Have you got anything to say around the barriers, challenges, and also ethical considerations for founders?
I mean, ultimately, I'd always say put your business ideas and people first. Ultimately, even if you're leveraging technology or you're kind of a technology first business, what you're doing is interacting with people, you're working with people, you're selling to people, and you must remember that these things are simply tools, and so they can be misused, misunderstood. They're never going to be a silver bullet. I think there's a tendency at the moment to try and shoehorn AI into everything and think it's going to solve the world's problems. But again, it's a tool, and there'll always be unintended consequences for these things. I think often, because in particular now we're in a space where a lot of the largest technology providers are the ones dominating this space, you really have to hope that they're doing their due diligence to remove biases and remove the kinds of problems that might actually exacerbate the problems we have in the world versus remove them. So, AI and Gen AI right now has a potential to kind of make the world a better place. But unfortunately, if I'm to hold up a mirror to the world is full of biases and problems, and this could just exacerbate those problems, right? So I think as long as when a business goes into assessing like the tools and solutions and things that they might want to use and leverage, they really make sure they understand it. What are the boundaries, and how is it that they're going to use that to actually benefit them and drive their business forward? Otherwise, it's kind of you find a lot of people might experiment, misunderstand what it's going to do for them, and kind of like lose traction. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I always say, and hopefully it gets to a point where this is no longer relevant to say, but yeah, it feels like about 10, 12 years ago, at least when I started my career, when we went from like reporting to insights, then all of a sudden everyone had to become a data scientist, is that we sort of went out the gate with all these experiments, because that's essentially what they are. And now have kind of been widely adopted, and we're only in reverse now trying to figure out what the ethics looks like, where it probably should have been done alongside. So back then people always wanted just to solve a difficult problem for the sake of solving that problem. And of course we know there are a lot of examples where from HR where, recommend what a good engineer looks like or developer, and it's just all males, because males essentially have worked in that space and CVs have been trained on that data. So yeah, I definitely echo what you've said. I think that's where the human brain compute power should come into AI. What AI should be doing, the sort of multiplying or the boring stuff, but then in terms of like the ethical side of things, that should definitely be coming from us as humans. So moving on, so we've got 2 more questions. Tommy, I'd like to ask you the second to last question, which is, from your experience, how does AI driven automation tools impact workforce dynamics within startups, and what strategies can founders employ to ensure inclusive and equitable outcomes for their teams?
So I think in the beginning, and I think so, a lot of people still feel like that. Once you say you're bringing in AI to do some things, the first reaction is, does this eliminate someone's role, especially content writers? They start to feel like, oh, if the AI is doing a better job than me in writing this. And I kind of had that in my team in the beginning. But then you start to realize that there's still a human element that you need in order to be able to increase the level of attainments that you could actually get and the level of productivity that you could get. So I think for us in our team, in terms of how the AI dynamics or how AI has played a role in terms of our automations and things that we do, we've tried to ensure that when we're trying to build the different processes within our application, we ensure that we do business first, and then AI is pretty much a layer on top of it. So the business remains, then AI is a layer on top of it. So when we're speaking to customers, we try to fully understand the different touch points that they have and try to figure out ways in which we could automate those touch points. And in automating those touch points, we look at the multiple technologies that we could use. And some of it could just be creating something very, very basic that has nothing to do with AI. And some of it could actually be now leveraging pretty much artificial intelligence to help you even do that faster. So I feel for founders generally, is all about understand that if you're not Microsoft building a Copilot or OpenAI building ChatGPT, you definitely then have a business first. And then on top of that is where you start to then see, how do I make my business and more productive? How do I help my customers beyond this? If this typically takes 10 minutes, how can I shorten it? And you just find more ways to shorten the process and help, there was a time where the user journey was a major topic in everything that you say. It's still a topic because at the end of the day, we still have to ensure that customers, now because they are also using all of these tools, the expectation of us is a whole lot higher. The barrier of what they need is a whole lot higher. And so we can't just do the basics and think is enough. So we have to now go beyond and try to fully understand what's out there and fully understand how your business works end to end, how the entire customer journey works, then start to apply what automations can you do here. But in doing all of that, collect data and try to figure out how you could analyze those data and figure out what you could do with it to actually make better decisions. And this could be better decisions for your company to grow, or it could be better decisions that you could place in the hands of your customers that could allow them will make bigger impact. Everyone shouts about ESGs and things like that, and if you're collecting appropriate data that could help businesses in their journey towards becoming more their ESG goals, then you're one of the tools that they'll probably be considering, provided you have all the other list of things that they want. So founders should just start thinking in multiple ways in order to automate and also to leverage AI within the organization.
Thank you, Tommy. I really like that, the perspective of not just thinking about your business, but also your customer, because ultimately, you wouldn't have a business if you didn't have customers. So yeah, I do, that really resonates with me. So we have 6 minutes or 4 minutes left, actually. So we have the last question. I know, Gan, you have something to share. So yeah, if you could go first, and then, yeah, I'm sure there'll be a couple of minutes left for Dan. And that question is, how do you see the future of AI shaping the landscape for early and growth stage ventures? And what advice would you offer to founders looking to stay ahead in this rapidly evolving technology landscape?
Right. Thanks. I will share my screen as discussed. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see this presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Sorry, can't really present review, present. Great. So in terms of the future of AI, I have some current data or current state to show you and how that compares to other industries. It takes SaaS, software as a service, about 10 years to get to 3 billion revenue as a whole industry, versus generative AI, it took about a year to get to 3 billion in revenue. So that's the takeaway, which is it really is a revolution. And then secondly, this investment data is from Sequoia Capital, one of the biggest venture capital firm in the US. In 2023, the infrastructure of generative AI has got 16.9 billion of investment, versus the horizontal and vertical application only got a pretty small margin relative to the generative AI infrastructure. So the takeaway is that we have the technology, and the infrastructure, but the applications are not there yet. And that also explains why there's only 3 billion revenue from generative AI so far, versus the investment has been this is about 20 billion. I guess the takeaway for everyone here is that you're not an expert of generative AI, but you must be an expert of your particular domain. So a vertical application would be an application in an industry such as traveling, and a horizontal app would be a particular customer service, such as a particular service or use case, such as customer service, such as fraud detection, which is industry agnostic. So imagine if I were one of you in the audience and I own a small travel agency, this is what I would do. what I would do is I will figure out a way to get all the WhatsApp messages from my clients and also collect all of the answers I have provided to them in the past. And then this is how I could collect enough data about what my user wants from a larger scale and what should be a successful answer for them if they do reach out to me for user experience related questions, so that I can feed these data back into a large language model, and with the hope that this could work well enough to automate some of the workflow. Yeah, so that's how that's how I would advise everyone, and I think these two infographic gives a pretty good summary of the current state of generative AI and also prediction on the future. That's all.
Thank you, Gan. Yeah, funny enough, I actually didn't know that about the infrastructure, but it does make sense because I think even the UK are investing heavily in infrastructure and quantum computing and compute power. It's very high up on the list at the moment. But as you said, there is that gap now between where we come in as founders if you aren't on the infrastructure side, because I think that is dominated by very few companies. But if you stay ahead of the trend and really know your vertical, then there's some applications. As we kind of get over this sort of what they call it, like that curve of adoption. So we're kind of on the up with that at the moment. So we're only probably a minute to go. Well, we're a bit over, but Dan, Tommy, do you want to say anything on that last point? 30 seconds each, perhaps.
No, I thought it was quite fascinating. And I don't know if I'm going to compare AI to SaaS because I feel like it's more comparison to the internet revolution. And that's kind of like how I see it in my head. So it's obvious. It was always going to take a year or two, but then the growth is quite incredible. And you can see how fast it took OpenAI to get how many users. Then, it was as fast as how what was this application during the pandemic, the one for audio. It basically took a whole lot of people just within a short span of time. But now it's there.
Oh, that group chat thing.
That group one.
Yeah, that was wild. Thank you for that, Dan.
Yeah, I guess I loved all the points again made. I mean, ultimately, it's one of those things where you have to remain curious, have people within your business potentially invest the time in making sure that they're either reading what's happening in the industry, making sure that your business model isn't about to be made irrelevant, and kind of investing in having people who are actually at least knowledgeable on how to do some prompt engineering. Like if you're just going to be a user of the technology, make sure you're leveraging that tool properly. Otherwise, work with people like you, people who understand the data. Can you create your own models? Because ultimately, what the world needs is for you to become the faces that the children of the future will see when they look at these businesses, these startups that have become something more significant. And you need to change the narrative and bring more of that unbiased kind of view on what these AI tools can do.
I absolutely love that, and I think that ushers us out nicely. I think, especially how I also see myself in this space, and I'm sure Tommy and most founders here is, if it is as hard as it is, if we sort of don't throw our hat in the ring with all the experience we have, will there ever be any change, right? So it's also looking at the future and being able to contribute to what the future sort of looks like. So it's super, super powerful. I definitely think, and also with great power comes great responsibility. It's often something I close out with, because we're literally building what the next 50 odd years looks like. So definitely something I take seriously. So I'm going to hand it back over to Waka, I believe, for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Ade. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Gan. I feel like I am an AI expert after such an insightful session. Thank you very much. And so to the participants, we are headed into a Q&A live audience session. And so feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat, and I will throw it to the panelists. Thank you very much, Wally, for the compliment. We appreciate that. And so if there are any questions, just let us know in the chat and we'll throw that out to the panelists. So as it stands now, there are no questions coming in. Maybe they will. I mean, that should tell that the session was quite insightful. We will give it like a couple.
Question. Can I ask a question to Dan?
Great, Tommy, go ahead.
So I've been fascinated by this space a whole lot, and I think considering the chart that Gan showed at the end, where he was talking about the infrastructure, horizontal or the vertical. Do we even need to start thinking so much more about the infrastructure, or are we already too late for that? And we need to start thinking more about how we create more horizontal patterns into this. Because I have other founders that I've worked with, and literally because of some announcements that Gemini made, or they've just become obsolete. And you're wondering, how can you compete? Do you even try? When it comes to the infrastructure aspect of things, or do you kind of like start to pick your lane in the horizontal or the vertical aspect?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, so that infrastructure piece, there's no way that anybody's going to catch up from an infrastructure perspective with those large organizations. So the likes of AWS, Google, Microsoft, the chip makers like NVIDIA, et cetera, the massive firms in China and nation states, like that's it. They have infrastructure, and we shouldn't particularly care too much about that. What we should care about is the fact that we have, as you guys have, as kind of founders and startups, you have a lens and a view on how to solve problems that people have, and therefore you can leverage the technologies. In particular, I'd say lean on like open source as well, right? Lean on what's being made available to all to develop things that solve problems. And in particular, when you're thinking about like an industry perspective, if you're solving something for an industry versus like it being like a horizontal kind of play around AI, an industry lens is always going to be more successful. If you're speaking the same language as a particular tribe of people, right, they will see that you understand them and their problems. So therefore, if it's marketing, I use the language of marketing, my marketing tribe get me. If it's healthcare, my healthcare tribe get me, right? So solving for those problems where you understand the intricacies of that industry, and when you're looking at the data, you get the data. And I think like either you or Sade was saying before, like there's loads of data out there that you can leverage and make your own. It's you applying your kind of views and perspectives that's going to make you successful. And I think at the end of the day, if like one of these major businesses did something that's very close to what you're doing, you can still carve out a niche that means that you are unique and able to provide value in this space.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I do know of a lot of founders that were approached by Google to work with them on Gemini, because a lot of their analytics or motion detection or whatever was more accurate. So yeah, even with these companies that are ahead, but still also playing catch up, and we all have the same problems anyway. With compute power, and we've all pretty much got the same issues, whether you're a big company and application and actually finding that niche. So yeah, that's kind of what I'll say. I believe there was someone who wanted to ask something on audio. If that is you, please speak.
Theo.
Hi there. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been insightful so far. I have a two-part question. So the first thing I noticed is that we haven't spoken a lot about AI in creative ventures. We've spoken about it in entrepreneurship, but not a lot in creative entrepreneurship, which leads me to the lady who was talking about information about potential candidates and how an AI tool can help understand if, for example, they'd finished a course or how well they had done and gotten a certificate and things like that. And my question to that is, how do we navigate not falling too far down that rabbit hole of AI giving us such clear information on how well someone has done something, especially with regards to like creative industries. For example, Einstein would be a great example, speaking of going back to certain centuries. Wasn't particularly great at school, didn't really finish a lot of his courses, but was Einstein. And if we used AI to kind of answer that question of how well did he do, we might not hire Einstein in that instance. So just kind of understanding how we can navigate that space to implement the human factor into that as well, of understanding, especially in creative ventures, that sometimes people may not finish. Mark Zuckerberg is a great example. People drop out of university all the time and start the biggest businesses in the world. So how can we kind of navigate that? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that question was addressed to me. So Keo, I get what you're saying, and I totally agree in that line. It's like and that's the first thing you need to know. It's like the algorithm is always going to be biased in one way or the other. It can't be perfect. However, when to the point of getting if this person has finished this course or all that, those are not things that AI automatically tells you. Those are data points that you get from whoever you're integrating with. So in our situation, the conversation was, if I know that this person said that they have this sort of skill and they've taken a course, did they actually complete that course? If they completed the course, then I could have that sort of information to be able to place in the hands of the hiring manager, and whatever they do with it is now based on their own company policy. So it's about having multiple data channels. And when you think about the creative industry is one industry that shares a whole lot. And right now it's come of its own when it comes to, music, when it comes to art, when it comes to even the way in which we interact and live our lives. It's like it's become extremely rich in that sort of ways. So if I don't know if I'll call my product like a creative product, but if I'm a founder within the sort of within the creative industry, I'll still want to understand and analyze who my end users are. And in order for me to do that, I need to still have multiple data points, because otherwise you're only going to be looking at it from a very narrow scope. And right now the game is looking in a very, big lens and seeing things from multiple areas. And that's how you actually understand a very good customer behavior. So what we are capturing is trying to capture a candidate's behavior. What the hiring manager does with the candidate's behavior is automatically up to the hiring manager. But then we then have the ethical way of saying, you can't say that this candidate is better than this candidate because this candidate finished this course and this candidate didn't finish this course. It's just a matter of this candidate finished this course, this candidate didn't finish this course. What do you think? Do you get the difference? There's a difference to coming to, and just being able to say, okay, we're going to create a product that says if someone finished this course, score them at 100. If someone doesn't finish this course, score them at 60. That is the dangerous line. And that is the emphasis you're making when it comes to Mark Zuckerberg in terms of dropping out. But then dropping out of university, we still sometimes forget it was an intellect even prior to that. And it's all about if the criteria of him getting a job was this person must complete, a university degree, then that is up to the hiring manager, because as far as he's concerned, his own view of who needs to do this job is already very myopic. And that's another area in which we need to start to educate. And this is what the creative industry could do. in educating people to understand that it goes beyond just going to the four walls of a school or doing things in a particular way to say this is the right or the wrong way. Who knows the right, or who said this is the right way in the first place? And yeah, so it's just based on data, because it feels like people that go through, that have an MBA and do this and that tend to be this, and that's why they feel like that is the avatar of an ideal candidate. But is that avatar changing? And the only way we know if the avatar is changing is through the data points you're collecting. This person excelled here, even though they didn't complete this. Isn't this a better candidate for you? And that is the new world we're living in right now.
Thanks for that. Gan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so I have a different view on that. I think here the examples you provided, like Mark Zuckerberg, they're outliers of our society. So my view on this is, in terms of hiring or recruiting in any industry, at the moment when you want to hire someone, you already want this person to fit into a box. So it's kind of like oxymoron. If you really want someone that's innovative, that type of person generally don't choose to work for another organization. They will follow they will follow the footsteps of likes of Mark Zuckerberg. They would do something unconventional. So I just thought that these AI use cases are for the general public. And obviously, I think you will still have outliers within our society that can do amazing things, that break stereotypes, break data points, break the patterns that we have identified in the data points.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. Here, I think your points were really strong, really powerful, especially as someone I mentioned earlier, I'm neurodiverse, so dyslexic, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs skew on that side, and it interacts with creativity, and often just didn't feel like I fit in really anywhere. And I definitely think that we haven't really untapped that whole side of things in terms of whether it's soft skills, whether it's, I don't really know how to categorize it, but it is apparently one of the things that can't be automated, that you can't necessarily teach a machine to do, and consciousness. And I think that sort of also is in line with creativity. I do know that there is a lack of application in creativity. I think there are a lot of focus as well, especially around Innovate UK and grants on the creative sector. I think the difficulty for me with the creative sector and application is ownership, which I'm sure we've all seen before, so I don't know how we're going to get around that. Who owns the IP to the artwork, or to the beat, or to the tunes? So that is an interesting one, and I don't actually know, it's not something I follow so much, but definitely yeah, something that I'm super interested in, the application of the creative side of things. And I think for now the bottleneck is probably working out IP rights, and we already know in general this is an area before AI where it's super difficult anyway. So who owns the masters, and so on and so forth, and actors not being paid well, and their rights basically being owned by the publishing companies. So I think until some of that gets out, but I really hope it can turn on its head and creatives can have more control and actual equity in what they're producing. So that's my stance on that. But we have one hand raised, which is D Mac or MCK. DMCK.
Hello, hi. That's funny. Quick question. So I do like a fair bit of like creative work, and I was just wondering, is there any apps that I could use to create like interesting images using AI? Because I see a lot of people using it, but I just don't know where to start or what to do, if that's relevant.
Do you have any tips?
Yeah, so you can experiment with like DALL-E, that's like OpenAI's version, and then there's, I think it was Midjourney as well. I'll track down the three main ones, but basically it's a form of machine learning, where you can basically feed it a prompt and it'll create an image for you. So DALL-E and kind of Midjourney, I think, are the two famous ones. But yeah, feel free to experiment. I completely agree with what everything's just been said around the ethics of it all. I was just about to respond to someone about hazarding a guess as to where policy is. Typically, you're talking about policymakers, the government being like 10 years behind.
Yeah.
But because of the pace of change and the nature of the potential impact on society, you're seeing policymakers react a lot quicker, but they will always typically be a couple of years behind at least. But thankfully, you've seen the EU kind of swing into action. That will influence what other countries do and other regions of the world do, to hopefully kind of apply some of these regulatory boundaries that are needed to make sure that people aren't kind of left behind. But yeah, I'll track down a couple of those kind of more creative things for you to experiment and play with.
Yeah. Sounds good. Oh, Keo, I think, have we got another minute or two?
Yeah, it's a quick one. Thank you so much for your answer, Tommy. That was really insightful as well. And I think as someone in the creative industry, I think it's important for me to mention, just going to, I think, Gan, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, mentioning the outlier that is the likes of Einstein and Mark Zuckerberg. I would completely agree in the science fields and maths fields and things like that. But if you look in the creative industries, you may notice that it's actually more the norm in creative industries that people who have these talents tend to find that they step out of what is standardized educational systems or standardized platforms to jump right into this thing that they find they're quote unquote so gifted at. So I think I would just, by putting it out there, would love for the conversation and just the ecosystem to understand that in the creative industries, I think there's space for that is what I want to say. But thank you both so much for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my job is actually done now.
Great. Thank you very much, Shadi, and thank you to our expert speakers for doing an excellent job in answering the questions. So currently, go into an online network session, which is going to be fun. You have the opportunity to network with our expert speakers. We'll go into a breakout room now. And so Matilda, can you please assist us in that regard? We are going to have 4 breakout rooms with 1 speaker. And so feel free to unmute when you get into your breakout room and ask all the questions. There's an opportunity to network and also build rapport with our expert speakers. If you do face any challenge, please let us know in the chat and we would assist you. Thank you.